Yo, what's up, weeds? It's me, Weeb here, back with part 3 for What If Deku Had Rewind. If you guys want to see more of this series to come, as well as other series, make sure you hit the like button, comment down below what you thought of the video, and subscribe to the channel for more. Let's just get right into the Sports Festival arc for What If Deku Had Rewind. It's been a few weeks now since the USJ incident has occurred, and Deku, as well as everyone else, has now gotten accustomed back to school life at UA. Deku being now more famous than he had before, after he had taken care of a majority of the League of Villains using his powers. Deku had become one of the more popular people in class, actually, as Deku was actually kind of shy about it, with everyone complimenting him a lot more. This actually made Uraraka feel jealous for some reason, but she couldn't place why. Anyway, Aizawa would come into class, and, not being all bandaged up, would begin to talk about the sports festival which would be coming up. A sports festival, Deku would ask, as he asked if this is really appropriate right now after the League of Villains had attacked. Aizawa would nod, saying that he thinks it's a good idea for everyone to seem calm and relaxed, for the public to know that UA is just as strong as it ever has been. Not to mention that this is a very important examination for them as well, as a sports festival can be what can push people from UA to become actual heroes from interest from other heroes already in the work field. Deku as well as Bakugo would both be interested by this, as Aizawa would explain the prospects that you can gain from entering the sports festival, as well as why they want to try and win it. Deku would be now hyped more than ever, as he's ready for the sports festival, thinking that he's going to take the top spot for All Might. Anyway, we have a flashback to just after the USJ incident. All Might would show Deku his wound for the first time, as he tells Deku that All For One was actually the person who created this. Deku would be shocked, as he then asks All Might if he wants him to fix it for him. What? All Might would ask. Deku would tell him that he can probably fix it, as it's a living material, so he can rewind it. And now with his, One For All affecting his ability, making it so he can affect even non-living materials, even if he has plastics from surgeries previously in there, he can actually rewind it all back to his body from however many years ago he fought All For One. All Might would be shocked, as he had never thought of this concept, and then tells Deku to give it a try, as it might be worth it. As Deku places his hand on All Might, he'd be shocked at how much plastic as well as other materials have been shoved into All Might's body. Damn. Your entire respiratory system was almost completely destroyed. He'd begin rewinding All Might as the color of green would begin to illuminate around All Might's body in his wound area. Suddenly, we would hear a stretching sound as all of All Might's limbs begin to change, as suddenly All Might's body would begin to buff up. The wound where All Might had received damage from All For One was now completely gone, as Deku had rewinded All Might's body to back before he and All For One had their battle. This means that All Might now has access to use more of his leftover sparks of One For All, as All Might then buffs up, telling Deku that he feels great, with Deku smiling, saying he's glad he could help. This means that All Might is now more in commission than he ever would have been before, as he can actually breathe and go into his form without coughing up blood. Deku and All Might would now both be able to use One For All pretty efficiently, as All Might isn't weakened anymore, so... Anyway, back to the present. Deku and Baku and everyone else in Class 1A are now preparing for the sports festival, as it's only going to be a week away. Deku would be at home practicing as he trains with making flowers as well as other plant life, as he always has, grow immediately and then shrink, as he increases his speed in doing so back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. As he works on this, his mom would be very proud of him, as she asks him what he'd like for dinner that night. Deku would smile as he says she'll take whatever she can make for him, which makes her happy as well, because Deku's usually been a very soft-hearted and pretty timid as well, so this was not that out of the ordinary. Anyway, a week would pass, as now the sports festival had finally arrived. Deku, as well as the rest of Class 1A, would be ready for the sports festival, as they get into their gym clothes for their participation, and get down to the actual stadium area. As everyone's excited about these tests, Deku would be a little worried about what's going to happen, as his quirk is pretty usable in most scenarios. But if it's something that he can't actually help in, he wouldn't want to get dragged down and lose the sports festival for All Might's sake. We see All Might just before the Sports Festival holding his hand on Deku's shoulder, telling him that he needs to shine to show everyone the brilliance of his power, as well as get Deku out there so that when he takes over as the next symbol of peace, that everyone accepts it. Deku would nod, saying he'll try his best, as the Sports Festival is now ready to begin. Deku snaps back to attention as we see Midnight then spinning the wheel for the first test, making it the long race that they have to take. Everyone would get in line for the race, and just as it's about to start, Deku would smirk as he has an idea. 3, 2, 1. Bam. Suddenly, a whole row of pine trees would begin to explode from inside of the actual stadium, as Deku's now on top of the tree, as he runs from branch to branch, jumping as he then lands to the ground, in front of everyone who now has to get through this winding forest. Where did the forest come from? People from other classes be saying, as we see Todoroki freezing the entire forest, making a frozen wonderland, as he then was rushing right next to Deku, now making the ground frozen, trying to catch Deku's feet. Deku would leap into the air, but as he touches back onto the ice, he would melt it instantly, using Rewind on this non-object to turn it back to water. Todoroki would be frustrated by this, as he realizes that Deku can nullify his ice by just re-sublimating it back to water, making it ineffective. As Deku and Todoroki are now head and head together, we would hear Bakugo from the back screaming, "Oh no, you don't, Deku!" as we see him rushing forward with a large explosion from the back, sending Bakugo flying to the front of the crowd, with Bakugo in front of Todoroki and Deku now. As the three are now racing against each other and time, we then finally make it to the part of the robots, as Deku, Todoroki, and Bakugo both look at the giant robots before them. Deku would then create a humongous redwood as he drops the seed and then expands it at massive speeds, impaling one of the robots as he then climbs it, then before reforming the seed, pulling it into his hand and jumping over the robot. As he's about to land, he would then touch the robot as he then shrinks back down as all the parts of it begin to dismantle themselves as it falls to the ground. Deku would then slide on the piece of metal as he then jumps off of that, giving him a speed boost as he continues running. As Deku runs, he would then touch the ground with the cement on the bottom floor of where they're running, as he then would rewind it, turning it back into liquid cement, as Todoroki and Bakugo are slowed down by this. "That's a dirty trick, Deku," Bakugo would say, as Deku would turn around laughing, saying that everyone is able to use their quirks in this fight, and they're going to try their best to win, right? As Deku continues rushing through the area itself, as he runs and runs and runs, he'd eventually make it to the parkour area, where he has to jump and get across the canyon. Deku would think of an easier way, as he then throws down several sunflower seeds, and then would begin to rewind them forward. As he winds them forward in their time, he'd create a massive bridge, a bridge completely comprised out of the sunflowers themselves, creating this very green as well as lush-looking bridge, almost like it was from some sort of fairy tale. Everyone in the audience is impressed, with everyone oohing and ahhing at Deku's masterful craftsmanship. As Deku runs over the bridge, just as everyone's about to catch up behind him, he would then deactivate the bridge, returning it back down to seeds as he then picks the seeds up on his side and continues running. "Hey, that's not fair!" Todoroki and Bakugo would both be thinking, as they see Deku now rushing away, with everyone having to do the parkour. Todoroki would use his ice to make an ice bridge for himself, copying Deku's idea, with Todoroki and everyone else following behind him. As Todoroki needs to catch up, he can't worry about what's going on behind him right now. Bakugo continues using his explosions to move as fast as possible, with Deku now a good few feet in front of him and Todoroki. The goal is just about to appear, as Deku is running at full speed. I guess it's time to throw down some traps, you would think. As he then pulls out of his pockets, he'd pull out several small plants in pots. What are those? Everyone will be thinking, as we then see Deku throw behind him the carnivorous plants of a fly-eater trap. As the giant plants begin to grow in size, as Deku winds their time faster and faster forward, suddenly we have ginormous plants that can eat people, as they begin to chomp towards Bakugo and Todoroki. That is very terrifying. This is what everyone would be thinking, as they're shocked as Deku continues rushing to the goal, before jumping and making it in first. The carnivorous plants will then dissipate as they go back down to the normal potted size, with Deku running back after the test has been ended and picking up his plants. As he puts them back into his side pockets, everyone will be thinking how much stuff he has in there, as Deku needs a lot of tools in order to actually use his quirk effectively, which he's been using plants as well as other objects that he can control with vast degree. Deku would be the winner, and this would make him be the one with the 10 million point on his head. A lot of people would want to join Deku, however, as Deku's a pretty popular person, as well as he's strong in his own right and can probably defend himself decently well already. Deku would team up, however, with around the same team, as Uraraka would be on his team, as well as everyone else who is from the original team from the original anime and manga. We see Deku now, just as the bell's about to start. Everyone's looking at him as they're about to go all for him. Suddenly, as the bell timer starts, Deku would laugh as he throws down all of his redwood seeds that he has, 10 to be precise, all around his team, and then grows them to maximum size. These 60-centimeter giants, with their thick trunks, would actually protect around Deku's team, as Deku basically plans on camping the entire time. As this massive forest grows around his team, they would just sit inside, as above them, the only thing that could reach them would be something from the air, as Todoroki is now preoccupied with other teams who aren't even willing to try and attempt to break through. As Todoroki, as well as some Baku, would be gathering points, Deku would be sitting nice and pretty, with his 10 million point headband, as he waits. Deku would decide that he should probably play around with everyone, as he then touches his hand to the ground of the concrete cement below them, as he would then liquefy certain parts of it, as he rewinds it back to before it was actually hardened. We can see Cementos watching as some of the cement begins to liquefy, as he thinks this must be that kid with the rewind ability. As Deku works on rewinding the stage, catching people in traps and locking them back in hard cement, Deku would eventually release them, as he's had his fun. Now that the entire thing is pretty much over, Baku and Todoroki are now after the redwoods, as they ran towards Deku and his team, with Baku prepared to explode the entire forest, with Todoroki shooting a massive glacier of ice at it. As it hits the tree, we can hear groaning of wood, as the wood particles inside begin to explode. Alright everyone, Deku would say. Now, Uraraka, do it now. As Uraraka would use her floating quirk on everyone in the team, they would then jump into the air as they kick off the sides of the trees, going higher and higher. As they finally make it to the top in the air, this is when Baku and Todoroki would finally explode the bottom as the trees begin to collapse on each other. Deku would then use his rewind quirk to gather back up his redwood seeds, as he then looks down with them all seeing Deku floating in the air. Deku would then hold up another seed as he shows it to them. Try this one! Coconut Barrage! As Deku would say this, everyone would laugh, before suddenly a ginormous coconut tree would begin to grow out of Deku's hand, as it then begins to shoot up massive amounts of coconuts. What? Baku and Todoroki are getting pelted by these hard-shell coconuts as they shatter into the ground, making a liquid mess of coconut juice. However, they keep rewinding and rewinding back on themselves. What Deku's doing here is he's winding the coconut tree to grow all of the coconuts and then shoot them as fast as possible by rewinding and then winding it back forward and back again. Basically going forward and back very, very fast. This is what he's been training with the past week before the sports festival, which basically gives Deku access to a coconut machine gun with using this tree ability. However, the problem with it is that he needs to be high up, as the tree itself is rather large, so if he used on the ground, he'd be completely immobilized. But here, when they're floating, and it has zero gravity, it's rather easy for Deku to use. Deku pelts everyone below with a massive amount of coconuts, as everyone is completely shocked at how Deku uses quirk. With everyone now giving up as Deku wins with the top place, not even losing his headband, with 10 million points, Team Deku would win. Everyone would cheer as they're now put into the final tournament, with Deku deactivating the coconut tree and everything else would be cleared out. As Deku and everyone eventually falls back down to the arena below, Uraraka would deactivate her zero gravity, as now everyone's made it. Now it's time for the final tournament, as the brackets are being made. The bracket would pretty much be the same, as we see Deku now would be fighting Shinzo. As Deku gets onto the arena, he would also have the advice from Ojiro from before about watching out and not answering any questions. As he walks forward calmly towards Shinzo, Deku would pull a coin out of his pocket as he flicks into the air. Heads or tails? Tails, he would think. Alright. As he doesn't let Shinzo ask him any questions, he would tell Shinzo the first thing that he would defeat him using only this small coin. Shinzo would ask what he means, as then Deku wouldn't respond. Clever bastard, he would think. Suddenly, Deku would flick the coin as it goes hurling towards Shinzo. Shinzo would easily move his hat out of the way as it flies off the arena, moving back and asking what that even means. Deku would then hold his hand up open as he then uses rewind on the coin back to its original position. Suddenly, the coin would then fly backwards as it slams into Shinzo, sending him falling onto the arena. That force, he would think, as the coin then lands directly back into Deku's hand. Deku would then throw the coin again, as suddenly it now is moving faster and faster, back and forth as it gains momentum. Deku is using his time ability of rewind in order to rewind the coin's position in the world, as well as gain velocity from it, as the world, the actual Earth itself, is continuously moving, causing the coin to gain more momentum over time, before it becomes so fast it's like a speeding bullet. This coin is moving back and forth across from Shinzo and Deku, as Shinzo's getting pelted from all sides now from ricocheting across the arena, as Deku is now thrown down some other plants and trees in order to make him have ricochet objects he can use. Shinzo is being pelted from all sides, as we see burns and stings beginning to form on his skin that are red from the coin hitting him with its ridges. Shinzo would be pelted from this coin over and over again, with him not even getting a chance to use his quirk, as suddenly Shinzo would be knocked out from a coin hitting him in the head from behind. The coin would then fly back to Deku's hand, as Deku would deactivate all of his plants and seeds, then taking them and returning them to himself. Shinzo would be knocked out, as Deku then hadn't even walked a single step more from walking to the arena. Deku would walk out, with the rest of Class 1A and the other classes being terrified of what he can do. This is when we see that Monoma would be very, very interested in copying Deku's quirk, as if he had that rewind ability, he could probably do some very interesting things. Deku would get back to the arena, as he then sits back down, with Ida and Uraraka saying that was kind of intense. Deku would nod, saying that he has to go all out if he really wants to win, as he thinks back to what All Might had told him. And I need to win, he would think, as he narrows his eyes. Todoroki would be hearing this, as he then thinks that he'll be the one taking the victory. As we see Todoroki now waiting, we would then have our other match begin, with Uraraka and Bakugo going the same as the original. Anyway, this would continue onwards until Deku's next fight, which would be Deku versus Todoroki. Deku and Todoroki get into the arena below, as the two of them stare at each other down. Deku would tell Todoroki that he's not going to let him win. This is when Todoroki would blast ice towards him. Deku would sweep his hand out as the ice instantly melts to water, with everyone in the audience oohing and ahhing at this spectacular show. This is when we would see that Todoroki would begin to shoot more ice at Deku, trying to hit him where he can't rewind the ice before it can hit him. Deku would then sweep his hand, as instead of turning to water, he would sublimate into gas, as suddenly steam would begin to surround the entire area. You know what? I think this might work to my advantage, Deku would think, as he continues making more water and steam until the entire arena is covered. Deku would then suddenly rush towards Todoroki. Todoroki, hearing this, would create a mountain of ice, which Deku would dodge. As Deku rushes forward towards Todoroki, he would then slide onto the bottom half of the floor, as he did not melt the ice on the floor this time. As Deku slides across the ice, he would then rush forward, throwing a punch at Todoroki. Todoroki would try and block this, but his punch would go through the ice wall that was supposed to protect him and directly into Todoroki's jaw, sending Todoroki flying backward as he then hits into the ground area around him. Deku would then remember that he has physical prowess as well. He has one for all, as he decides he's going to use All Might's power to win this fight. As he then activates One for All in his body, he would see the green electricity flowing around him, as Deku would then be charging One for All throughout his entire body, as well as his quirk, which is now giving him more buffs than he would. This power, however, Deku can't fully control yet, as I might have mentioned that Deku has control over his rewind quirk, and he's been using One for All on his quirk, rewind, which is a part of his body, but not a physical, hand or a leg. Deku doesn't really know how strong he is with One for All exactly, as his physical body he hasn't really tested that much. Deku would rush, and as he runs towards Todoroki, he's just gotten up. However, his speed is increased many times. Wow, Deku would think, as he almost slides off the stage before he turns with a kick on Todoroki, sending him into the stage as the ground begins to shatter beneath his body. Endeavor is shocked as Deku is actually wiping the floor of Todoroki, smacking him back and forth, as Todoroki is too shocked to even be able to do anything. He's so fast, he would think, wondering how he's doing it, as Deku would then rush to Todoroki with a handful of seeds, thrusting them into his chest with a palm strike before growing them out of Todoroki's body, growing all around him and wrapping him in vines. As Todoroki is now completely wrapped up, he would then tell Todoroki there's only one way he can get out of this. He tells him that he has to use his full power. As Deku tells him that Todoroki, there's no way for him to beat him without using both of his quirks, and Deku's going all out against him. Todoroki would then listen to Deku's speech of how it's his quirk, and then would burn through the flames of the vines as he creates a massive flame. "Try rewinding this then," he would say, as he creates the massive attack of ice and flame that he used against Deku in the original. "I think I will," Deku would say, as he then runs towards Todoroki with his fist pushed back. "Let's do this, Todoroki, Shoto!" As Endeavor would then cry out Shoto's name, Shoto would explode his attack towards Deku. As the attack's just about to hit Deku, Deku would then say, "I'm sorry," as he punches through the flames and ice, rewinding the flames' energy and turning the atoms back into their normal form, as well as the ice sublimating to steam. He would be flying towards Todoroki with electricity covering his body as he punches Todoroki in the chest, sending Todoroki flying out of bounds and into the stadium wall. Deku would deactivate One For All, as he then feels an immense strain on his body as his stamina falls. Deku would fall to the ground as he's coughing up blood, not realizing that this is the kind of power that All Might was using. "Oh my god," he would think, as he feels sick. Deku would almost fall to his knees, as he then has to rewind his body, as Deku uses his object manipulation to rewind his body before this fight. He would think, as he had never tried using One For All like this throughout his entire body before, except for when he had, tried using One For All back during the test of Aizawa on the ball, which he had to rewind his arm for, which had been completely broken. Deku's body would be in shambles after that, but thanks to his rewind ability, he's fine. Deku would then get back up as he feels his stamina slowly recovering, realizing that his rewind ability isn't always going to be able there to help him if he doesn't have time in a fight to use it. Deku would walk off the stage with Midnight declaring him the winner as the final battle of this tournament would begin. Bakugo versus Deku. If you guys want to see the next part 4, for What If Deku Had Rewind, make sure to hit the like button, comment down below what you thought, and subscribe to the channel for more. I will see you all in the next one.